notice I've picked up a nail here, so I need to change my tube. I had the wheel off just as it would come off the bike. The first thing I'm going to do is remove any wheel spacers that I have, and on the sprocket side I'm going to remove the sprocket and any rubbers, noting which way they go round. Typically you're going to have a wear patch either on the bottom or on the inside to show you which way round that goes. So I'm going to remove those, check those out, make sure they're in good condition. And now I can position the tyre with the disc up, and I'm not going to be leaning on the disc creating damage. Typically when I travel I carry a tarp, so I've always got a clean surface to change a flat tyre on. If I'm in the sand, I don't want sand inside the tyre. So I have my tarp, I have 3 tyre irons. I used to travel with this type of tyre iron, but I've punctured more tyres with that sharp end than I have with these, so I tend not to use these type anymore. Of the 3, these 2 I don't really care what they are so long as they're round ended. This one, and I forget the name of the manufacturer, you can see it's kicked back slightly, and this is my bead breaker. This one is really important for me. It's most important. You can see it's kicked back, and if I hold the 2 together you can see the difference, I hope. So if you look at the end, the handle, that's what gives it away. I don't carry 3 of these because that's a bulky handle, so I carry 2 smaller ones and then that one which is my bead breaker. And then the last thing I carry is something so I can unscrew the valve, let the air out on the other side. You can see that pivots around, and then this screws into the inner tube and I can pull the inner tube down the little hole. This has saved my knuckles tremendously.
It's called a valve fishing tool.
It's called a valve fishing tool. I think the most difficult bit in changing the tyre is breaking the bead. So the first thing I do is I take my normal tyre iron and I just apply a little pressure. The second thing I do is I take my important tyre iron and turn it so the spoon is down, and I try and get that into the back of the bead, and that is what I'm breaking the bead down with. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'm actually pulling, and there it goes. That's the bead broken. From now all we have to do is get our tyre irons in and start to pull the tyre off.
Oh, clever. Holding the handle or putting the handles under the brake disc. And you work your way around.
We hope. And you can see why we use 3. The middle one just keeps falling out. So that is the minimum you can do. It's nice to break the other bead, it will make it easier for you, but then remember you've got to reseat that bead later, and reseating the bead is another issue, especially in the field. Don't do that. I travel with hotel shampoo bottles or detergent bottles or something like that, and I paint that on raw, and that gives me enough slippage to be able to seat the bead later on in the process. So let me fish out the inner tube. I need a 12mm wrench for this. I'm going to put one of those right there. That's my normal travelling kit. So I'm only working on the tools I travel with. This tyre is a little stiff, so I'm actually going to break the bead on the other side so I can get my hand in to actually get the tube out. So I push down with my generic, put my special tool in, and that's what I use to break the bead, and that is the important thing for this. There it goes, and it's all the way around. So in my kit I carry a patch kit. I tend to leave it in the factory packaging so that the patches don't get degraded. You can see what my normal tire iron kit looks like. It's just a mess because of all the water, etc. Some of the things I do like to carry: baby powder. This is useful for two things. One is you can put it on your backside when you're riding in hot weather and stop the monkey butt, and secondly is you can coat your inner tube with it and it'll help it slip around inside the tyre so you don't get any pinch points. And then I carry some of these quick compressed gas cylinders, and that helps me seat the bead later on. So the first thing I need to do is pull the nail, and I travel with a multi-tool. So I'm going to pull this nail, or hopefully pull this nail.
MacGyver.
Here. And that's my offending nail. Typically in the field I don't carry spare inner tubes, I carry my patch kit. So I would patch this just so I could get home. I wouldn't be using it at full speed. I would just want to get home so I could replace the inner tube. But I am home, so I'm actually going to replace this tube rather than patch it, so I can go out for my tour. So that's what I've done. I went and got myself just a correct sized tube, and I'm going to put that on now, and then we'll reseat the bead and see how that goes. I like these tops with the split because you can actually back out the valve with the top. And I like the valve out when I fit. There's your little valve.
Put it in a safe place.
And there. That one should be attached, but don't remove that second one. That places it on the inside. Now, away from the brakes, I'm going to cover this. You can see how this is not shiny. So this would stick to portions of the inside of the tyre, and if you actually got a fold while you're inflating this, that's what it would inflate like that, and you could certainly ride it around, you wouldn't have a problem with it, but over time you're going to get a hole right there at these pinch points, and you'll get a flat without seeing evidence of a nail or anything like that. So the way around that is I'm going to take some baby powder and I'm going to coat this whole thing. And you can see it on the old tyre. See this silvery slippery surface? That's what left of my baby powder, and that allowed the inner tube to slip on the inside of the tyre when I inflated it, so I knew I wasn't getting any pinch points. I say you can get them if you don't put any baby powder on there. So I like to take the baby powder with me. I do this away from the wheel just because I don't want the talcum powder or too much talcum powder on the brake disc. So typically if you've got a spoked rim, especially if you're on an older bike, you've got a rubber band around the inside of the wheel to protect the inner tube from the spoke ends. What can sometimes happen is when you take the tube out, you can pull that rubber band out with you, and once it's broken you can't get it back in. So I carry a little bit of Gorilla Tape, this is, and I roll a little bit off around a pencil, and you can see, and that's what I'm left with. About an inch or so wide, and then when I'm in the field, if I do pull that rubber band off, I can slip the tyre off and I can just do 2 or 3 turns around the inside of the wheel, and then I take my penknife and I just poke a hole through the valve hole, and then I can re-establish the tube into the wheel and not worry about getting a hole in it from the spokes. So now we come to the assembly side of things. I have the valve hole right at 12 o'clock, and I have my valve fishing tool. And the valve fishing tool has this screw-in insert, and that fits into the tube where we took out the valve from the tube. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop this in here and try and feed it out so it comes out the side of the tyre. The next thing I can do then is screw this into my inner tube, and depending on your tyre you may not be able to screw the actual tool in. It may bind up in here, in which case you're just going to move the inner tube around the tool. One way or the other you've got to screw it in. Till that's in, and now what I'm going to do is just start to place this in the I'm not so worried about it getting it perfectly lined up at the moment. I am worried about trying to keep the kinks out of it. Once that's all the way in, come back to my valve fishing tool, and now I can start to hopefully pull my valve in. So I've just got to wheedle that through. Now if you can hold this, you can unscrew the tool. Now one of the get out of jail free moves is you can actually take the retaining nut, slide that on first before you fish, and then if you've only got a little bit of valve sticking out, you can actually just thread that up and capture the valve stem before you unthread. That can be a useful move if you've got just a short stem. I'm not going to put that all the way down. I don't pull the valve all the way through because I like to seat the rim before I get into that. So now I'm going to start to assemble my tyre. Now if this starts to look like it's shooting off at an angle, all you're going to do is sort of capture the rim and just move the wheel, and you can move the tube around a little bit. Now I'm talking sort of combat in the field type stuff. If you've had your wheels balanced, typically you're going to have a dot or something here, little paint dot, to match against the valve stem. So if you have a dot on your tyre, now would be the time to look for that and match it against the valve stem. When you're going to seat the bead, one of the things not to do is pull back hard on this, and basically what you're going to do is this tip is going to be contacting the inside of the rim, and there's a possibility you can catch the inner tube between there and pinch it and puncture it, so you're going to be no better off. So I like to just come up to 12 o'clock and no further then. The first thing I'm going to do is actually do as much as I can by hand first. Now I go back to my original important tool because again it's got less of a throw, so I feel I've got less of a chance of contacting the inner tube, and I use that to start finishing placing the tool. Now when I get to this point, I try and resist chucking the tyre iron in there. If I can, I want to do it with pressure. Yeah, it's coming. See it slip? And there we go. And I'm going to do both sides because I broke the bead on both sides. Now when I'm doing this at home, I leave the valve out so I can seat the rim and then deflate the inner tube, put in the valve, then reflate the inner tube, and that gives me the opportunity then to know that the inner tube is away from the sides of the tyre and it's not getting any pinch points. If you're in the field and you're doing this with a hand pump, then you're going to have to put your valve back in, inflate the tyre, seat the bead, then I would deflate the tyre, deflate the inner tube, and then re-inflate. The problem with relying on these plastic caps to put in your valve is that you can quite easily strip out those little pieces there, so I like to go back to my main tool to make sure that my valve is indeed well seated in the tube. So I'm looking around at my rim, making sure that my bead is indeed well seated all the way around.
What if it wasn't? How would you know?
You see these lines on the outside here? There's a little series of little lines. If that wasn't equal all the way around, then all I would do is just deflate the inner tube, paint it with a little more soap, and then try and reflate the inner tube.